Thanks for checking out the Brad and John Show podcast. This segment of the show is brought to you by John Combest's book, Stalking, Harassment, Internet Trolling, A Guide to Recovering and Rebuilding After Online Attacks. It's a great reference if you've ever been the unfortunate target of a social media attack. It's available on Amazon. Just search John Combest. That's C-O-M-B-E-S-T, John Combest, and the book will show up in your search results. Now it's time for another segment of the Brad and John Show. Can you handle it? And we are back. This is the Brad and John Show. You can check out the website at bjshow.co, bjshow.co. John, I have in my hand, which I got about a month ago, I have the Pocket Constitution book.
Oh, nice. And don't be bringing that into a public school, Brad.
Well, here, hold on a minute. I got to turn on a better light here in the studio. I have very dim lights in the studio, and I got to turn on a light so I can read a little bit better. Okay, here's the crazy thing. Have you ever really gone through the Constitution and read the entire Constitution?
It's been many years. Yes, I have, and it's been many years.
Have you read through the amendments?
Yes.
The amendments are fascinating. Like, for example, here's amendment, this is amendment what, 16? Ratified February 3rd, 1913. 4 lines long. The Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes on incomes from whatever source derived without apportionment among the several states and without regard to any census or enumeration. That created the Internal Revenue Service.
What a beautiful day.
Yes. February 3rd, 1913. Now, the one that is getting all the play with our buddy Donald Trump is Amendment 14. And it has 4 sections. And this is Section 3 of Amendment 14, which was ratified July 9th, 1868. There is a reason for this, and the reason is the year 1868. What would that be? A couple years after what event, John?
3 years after a battle between the states.
Right. The Civil War ended. So essentially, Amendment 14 had to do with the fact that there was a situation where the South had seceded from the United States. The war did not go well for the South. They were defeated. The North, the Union, the true United States stayed together. The states that tried to secede came back into the Union, the United States of America, and away we go. Well, there was some patching they had to do. So this Amendment 14, which was ratified July 9th of 1868, was part of the fact that they're trying to essentially, pull some things together and enumerate the situation that, like, okay, this is the way it's going to go on forever. So here's section number 3. No person shall be a senator or representative in Congress or elector of president and vice president or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress or as an officer of the United States or as a member of any state legislature or an executive or judicial officer of any state to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. Now, the crazy part of this is this had to do with essentially the rebels, that they did not want to have the people who were, heading the
Confederacy,
the Confederate people. But the crazy part of this is you go back in history, and I've done a little research on this. There's all sorts of Confederate people that became senators and representatives and stuff like that. And I'm going like, hold on a minute now. Doesn't this Section 3 essentially say they couldn't be, but they were? But
you know what they didn't do, Brad? They didn't speak at a rally and then have some of their supporters walk around the Capitol.
So
that's the difference, Brad.
I once again, I am the guy. I'm the what do you want to call it? Poster boy for the underdog. My entire life, I have lived in the underdog, okay? And this very minute, I'm the underdog because I own 3 radio stations. I'm a local owner and operator. and almost all the radio stations have been snapped up by big corporations. Almost all the stations in St. Louis are now owned by 3 different companies. And by the way, there was just a thing that the FCC shot down. They had their quadrennial review, whatever it was. They wanted to loosen the regulations even further so that the big companies could have more stations. So essentially, somebody like iHeart could own every radio station in St. Louis. And
what's wrong with that? I mean, we could see a civil war between them and Hubbard. That was the name you were thinking of yesterday.
Yeah, Hubbard, exactly, right. But the problem with that is that what you have is, within the broadcasting business, a lot of us refer to iHeart as Evil Empire, or as I called to it, McRadio. You can drive cross country, and I just did that over the weekend, Sunday and Monday, Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. And you can hear Ryan Seacrest on 42 different radio stations because they're all owned by iHeart, okay? So what you have is you have a concentration of power that, and not only that, if Bob Pittman, the guy who is the CEO of iHeart, decides that he hates let's say he hates Donald Trump one day and he sends out a memo to all these stations that nobody's supposed to mention Donald Trump on the air. And then one day he changes his mind and he hates Joe Biden and he sends out a memo the next week saying, I changed my mind. I hate our president. Don't ever talk about him. And if you do, say nasty things about him. That's what happens. That's what happens when you have concentration of power like that. And you go back in history, and there have been instances of this. If you look at in journalism, what they called yellow journalism, you look at the Hearst Empire, that type of thing. And I just don't quite understand what's going on with some of these things. And that one, the situation for me is I had an interesting thing last week where last Friday I had a meeting with Dave Zucker, who is the former mayor of Garden Prairie, and he hooked me up with his son who's from Hawaii. His son is buying radio stations in Hawaii. And it was fascinating talking about this. And he specifically talked about the situation with the terrible fire that killed all those people. That what happened was a lot of the people who were relying on their cell phones for information of where to go, guess what? The cell phone towers were all burnt down. And see, that's why this whole thing is there's a bill right now because a lot of the car manufacturers are trying to get AM radio out of the cars. And there's a whole crazy story about that, about technical. And what the underlying story of that is that there's a technical reason why they want it out of the cars because they can't make it work with all the electric items and things like that. But the point being is that he said that the only information the people on this island had was from the radio stations. Yeah. Because the cell phone network was down, the internet was down, because, pretty much a lot of times the internet and the cell towers are sometimes there's certain people that now get their internet from the cell towers, like if you have the newer Verizon has a box like that, and as well as T-Mobile has that. Matter of fact, don't you have that?
I have that. Yeah, I have the 5G tower here.
Right. Okay. So you're not connected by any wires whatsoever. Correct. So if that cell phone tower, if there was a fire near that cell phone tower, and that cell phone tower went down, your internet would be down, and your cell phone would be down, and you would have no communication with the outside world. Correct.
Correct. That's right.
Well, anyway, and it was sort of a fascinating talk about this because of the fact that even some of I think one of the congressional people was trying to give someone an award to a couple of Hawaiian broadcasters because they went above and beyond the call of duty, and radio was the only way they could get mass dissemination out to the people, essentially.
And wasn't that were you ever involved in ham radio?
Oh yeah, I'm a ham operator.
Okay, I didn't know, and so I don't have any experience with it. But isn't that one of the primary functions of ham radio? Is essentially for community service.
Matter of fact, it's funny you should mention that. My son, this is so weird. My son, this is my oldest son. I went to see him in Florida. I drove down there. I drove 12 hours on Sunday. Got to his house about 5:30. Sat there with him and his girlfriend. We went out to dinner. Came back. My son brings out all these Motorola radios that he's bought online that he's reprogrammed, and he has one of them, which he's not a licensed ham operator. I am, and he has one of them that's on this system, and it's essentially a system put up by the state of Florida for ham radio operators. And it's sort of complicated, but I'm sitting in his kitchen in Milton, Florida, which is just outside of Pensacola, Florida. And I'm a licensed ham, so I could grab the thing and push the button and talk on it and throw my call letters out there and the whole bit. And I just came online and said, KZRSLQ, I'm just checking on new radio. Anybody out there? This system turned on 50 repeaters all over the state of Florida. And that's what this network is for. It's for the hams. And matter of fact, it's for the hams to interface with, and it's actually done by Florida Department of Transportation. Florida Department of Transportation put this thing up, and the idea behind it is this is like this backbone, or more like a fallback communication systems for the hurricanes. So in other words, the idea being is if there's a hurricane and it knocks out all the cell towers and the whole bit, this system is still up because it's not on cell towers, it's on different towers. Some of the towers may be knocked out, but the way the system is designed, there's essentially a backup system. And so in other words, the hams would all work together and work literally shoulder to shoulder with the police, and they've done this for years and years and years. And he sent me this. Matter of fact, if you want, I'll send you the link. It's pretty interesting about how they explain it. And there's a lot of technical stuff in here. But the idea being is that they are essentially, preparing for if the stuff hits the fan and all the cell towers go down. What do you do? And I don't think we have that in Missouri. I mean, right?
Yeah, I don't know what would happen. I'm not familiar enough with the technology.
Well, at our one tower, we've got used to be Sprint. I guess it's now T-Mobile on there. And we talked about this before. The system's run on 48-volt DC batteries. So if the power goes out, typically there's enough battery power to keep the cell site up for like a day. But after a day, unless they bring a generator up there, a portable generator, and plug it in, the cell site goes down. So if you live in that area, guess what? 1 minute you're on the cell phone.
Yeah, you're out of luck.
Next minute you're not. Anyway. How do we get talking about that? Okay, we're coming into the last section. Matter of fact, it's sort of weird. Tomorrow will be the last show of the 2023 year for us. We just started the show, 3 weeks ago? Is that when we started?
5 weeks ago, I think.
5 weeks ago? Come on. Is it 5 weeks?
Yeah, I think so. I announced it remember, I was on Scott's show, the midweek update. Excuse me. I believe it was 5 weeks ago. And we weren't even planning on talking about the show that early because it was the Monday prior. And then we talked about it. Yeah, I mean, remember, here's how we remember it. We were the second most important 1120 to St. Louis radio ever. We started on 1120. So with all due respect to Bob Hyland, we might be the most important 1120 in the history of St. Louis radio.
I don't know about that.
Well, maybe not. Maybe not yet, Brad. We bring as much joy. If you take the St. Louis Cardinals out of the equation, then we bring as much joy as 1120.
Well, not this past season. Nobody's had any joy out of the Cardinals.
That's right. Absolutely. We'll probably end up talking about the Cardinals on Scott's show today. We usually talk a little bit about the Cardinals. And we'll make several obtuse pro wrestling references as well.
Are they going to? You think the Cardinals are going to finally shell out some money?
I don't know. I mean, that's one of the things Scott and I are probably going to talk about. It's that everybody's waiting for. I think Cardinal fans are waiting for another shoe to drop, and one of my favorite phrases that I learned this year, Brad, is that expectations are resentments waiting to happen. So if
you're a real optimist, aren't you? Oop, you still there? Did I lose? I lost you there for a minute.
To drop a lot of money on a pitcher?
Well, the crazy thing about it is if you look at what the Dodgers with two Japanese players, they've spent over $1.3 billion on two dudes?
But they've deferred payment, Brad. So it's just like Americans the average American consumer putting their Christmas on a credit card. The Dodgers, for folks who don't know, Dodgers have given these two guys huge contracts, but I believe at least for both of them the payment is deferred, right?
I don't think so. I think
so. That's what I'm pretty sure.
My understanding is the difference between football and baseball is that they say they give the guy a $30 million contract. The chances of him collecting $30 million are pretty slim. But in baseball, the contracts are guaranteed. So if the team says we're going to pay you $30 million, and if the guy, I mean, sort of like the Aaron Rodgers thing where he goes out on the field and in the first set of downs, he blows up his what did he blow out his knee or whatever, his Achilles tendon or something like that. And
but I read so I have it up now. The Ohtani agreement is that all but $2 million of his salary is deferred until completion of the contract.
Yeah, but once again, it's like the payment's got to come sometime. I mean.
Oh yeah. But what I'm saying is that they're putting off the cost of the payment.
Yeah, but here's the scary aspect of that. What all the teams are banking on is this television revenue. And if you know what's going on with this crazy thing with what used to be the Fox Sport Network, which is now the what do they call it? It's the Bally Sports Network, which is actually owned by the people that run Channel 30 here in St. Louis. That is the wheels are falling off that machine because that company's declared bankruptcy, and there are some of the teams that, and maybe this will be better for them, who are just going to do the stuff themselves. They're going to be like their own broadcaster, and to me, I'm not a big sports fan, but here's my problem. My problem is when you used to say, hey, I'm going to watch Monday Night Football. You could go to any TV set and turn on, at the old days when it was Channel 2, ABC affiliate, you could watch Monday Night Football, right?
For sure.
Nowadays, it's to the point where if you is it on Amazon or is it on YouTube TV or it's like
and the worst is when a Cardinal game is on Apple TV.
Right. It's like,
and you're like, dang it, why can't I? And then, but you know what happens though? You end up going to YouTube. I mean, I'm not suggesting anybody break the law, but you go to YouTube and you look for anybody that is streaming a bootleg version of the Apple show on their YouTube channel, and you just hope that it stays on for an hour or so, and then you switch to a different one.
To me, that's we've gone the wrong direction. And if I were the teams, I mean, obviously the difference is that the teams are just getting boatloads of money from Amazon.
Sure, of course.
So they don't really care if you watch the game or not because of the fact that they're getting paid. They don't care,
Yeah.
Okay, we've done another show, another one in the can. Hard to believe 5 weeks. I don't know if I believe that or not.
It's 4 or 5. I mean, I was never a math guy, Brad. I'm just a talker, You and I are just talkers, I can't speak for you, but I'm just not a math guy.
We got to run. We'll be back tomorrow. BJ Show is out. BJShow.co. Check it out. 8 o'clock.